Hello and welcome to Gabriel's 3D Printing. Today we'll be looking at Lego Smash Trophy, designed by Tovsky. Now first things first, we'll look at the notes down here. And we see that this is a remix from two other files. There's also no information given on the settings for the print, nor if we need supports, bed adhesion, etc. But we can figure that on our own, so it won't be too difficult. The first things first is download all files. Once you download everything, you should have a folder similar to this. Now, as you notice, we have two STLs. We have Smash Bros. Trophy and Smash Bros. Trophy Base. Now, we're going to be printing the Smash Bros. Trophy STL. This is the entire thing that you see here. The base is just the base itself without the actual Kirby with the legs. So first things first is click and hold on the STL, drag it onto your slicer software. I'm using Cura 4.6.1. And then we should be ready to edit the model now. Once you've successfully imported your STL file, you should be greeted by an error in Cura saying that your model is not manifold. That basically means that the model is not closed up correctly. But that doesn't really matter for us because it looks like the manifold areas are inside of the model, not outside. So it won't affect the visuals of the model. So we're fine and we can safely ignore that just by clicking X. No further action is needed. Now, taking a look at the model by holding right click, we do see that there are some red areas. We see some in the hands and some down here in the upper part of the legs. So we will need to add some supports there. We're going to click here. We're going to go and set a standard quality with a layer height of 0.2 millimeters. You can go finer if you want, but I'm going to stick at 0.2 millimeters. And we do need supports like I said before. Now you can add standard supports by clicking here and clicking on generate support, but there is a much better way to support this model rather than using standard supports, and that's something called tree supports. Tree supports basically are a experimental version of supports in which they sort of branch out and touch the model as little as possible while still giving support to the areas that need it. Now in order to enable that, you're going to go to experimental down here and we're going to click on tree supports. Now you may not have that enabled, and if you don't be worried. All you have to do is hold your mouse over here, over experimental, click on the little gear icon, and then you should see this experimental tab. Now all I have to do is click on everything that says tree support. So all these settings down here, just turn them on, check, and then close. So once again, we're going to click on tree support, and it should be very similar to the regular support settings with a few minor differences. I wouldn't change anything you see here. Keep everything as it is. You should have around an angle around 40. You might even have 35. Now, leave the angle as it is if you've never used any tree supports before, but if you have and you know what your printer is capable of, you can definitely up that number. I'm gonna change mine to 55 because that's usually a good enough angle for me. So we have that. Now let's take a look at the bed adhesion. We see that this model has a large flat plate that's directly on the build surface. We won't need any bed adhesion for this model. And other than that, it looks pretty good. So just click on slice, let it process. Now, because we are using tree supports, the computer will take a little bit longer to actually slice the model. So don't be worried or scared that it's taking forever. This usually takes quite a while whenever using experimental supports or experimental settings, but it shouldn't be longer than 30 seconds. Let's wait for that to finish. Once the software has finished slicing, we'll be greeted with a time estimate as well as an estimate on how much filament we'll be using. So it's going to be roughly 8 hours of printing as well as 70 grams of filament being used. Now, if you were to use regular supports for this model, it would actually be 1 hour more. Using tree supports, we actually saved an hour. So that's always a plus on there. Now we should always preview the model, make sure there's no errors or anything funky going on. So holding again right click and dragging your mouse, you can take a look around the model. And we see that there's nothing funny going on. There might be something going on here, but you can safely ignore that. The support should be fine right there. Take a look at this here, same thing as well. Looks pretty clean. With tree supports, considering it is experimental, you might see some blobs just randomly popping up in there. But there's no need to worry about that. These will probably just fall off pretty quickly and easily without damaging the model. Take a look around. Same thing. Nothing too strange. So we see some supporting down here. That will also be easily removed. And other than that, yeah, it looks pretty good to me. So all I have to do now is plug in your flash drive with the SD card, and then save to file, import it into your printer, and start the print. Now, in case you can't use tree supports and want to use regular supports, you can simply do that by going to the Supports tab, clicking on Generate Support, and letting it slice. Now, don't mess with any of these settings if you're a beginner. Just leave them as they are. They're already meant for your printer if you set up the slicer correctly. But in my case, I've done benchmarks and I know that I can do a 55-degree overhang angle. So I'll type that in, I'll hit slice, and we'll give it a second. And in a few moments, we'll see the preview of the model. Now, off the bat, you can already tell that it's going to take roughly an hour and 30 minutes more than if we were to use tree supports. And we're going to use 8 grams more, because now we're at 78 grams as compared to 70. And another thing with this type of supporting is that the supports are straight down in a vertical fashion, meaning they will be touching the base of the model. So you will leave some surface dents or imperfections on it whenever you remove them. So if you can, do try to use tree supports, but if you can't, then this is also another option for you. Here we see the model straight off the build plate. Supports are not difficult to remove at all. It should take you only a few minutes. Here you can see a close-up of the model without any supports attached and with a little bit of cleaning / post-processing. Now, you didn't need too much post-processing for this, and there are no visual defects on the model. Everything turned out pretty good. But you can see the seam line through the back, and you'll be able to see it with the arrow pointed to it right about now. That's just where the printer changes layers with the Z direction. So you can probably hide that. Most models have it hidden in the back, but with this one, because of the curvature, it's definitely going to stand out.